is you find it in business reporting. You know, Business Insider, Forbes, Yahoo Finance, CNBC Squawk.
Yeah, but I imagine then they're like, oh, this is a good way to do business then. Oh, I didn't even realize that. All we have to do is jack up our prices and then we make more profit. It's like, well, what if people can't afford it, sir? It's like, oh, they will. They will. We own 1/3 of the market. So, I mean, are they going to go to the other two guys? We'll tell them. I'll just get them on the phone and we'll all jack up our prices together. It'll be a beautiful thing for everybody, especially us. I don't know if you've seen that Jon Stewart returned with a new show. It's been kind of mixed. There are some interesting segments. But what is, I think, the most fascinating part about it is that he's bringing on guests and having conversations, a lot of which, the conversations are quite left-leaning, or at least they're talking about concepts that I'm not sure if Jon Stewart was aware of, or maybe he is aware of it and he just wants to have it presented in a funny fashion. Anyways, I thought this was an excellent discussion about corporate greed, the supply chain issue that we keep bringing up, and hearing it from a perspective that hasn't really been talked about a lot, which is quite refreshing, to say the very least.
So I'm watching the news this weekend, and it's a 5-alarm inflation fire. Every newscast, I'm jumping with it. Tonight, inflation, families, hundreds of dollars extra a week, a month. When will it end? 7%, 10%. And I'm like, oh my God, this inflation has now gotten to a point where it's really beginning to affect people's bottom line. And they start going into the why of it, right? And the why of it is supply chain and pandemic and all these different things, and nobody can keep things on shelves and demand. And I'm thinking to myself, I think we're missing one small part of this, and that is these companies are making record profits. Like when they keep talking about controlling inflation, they keep talking about we got to raise the interest rates and try and retame this tiger, and it's the only thing you can do. And yet, there is one other thing that we haven't ever considered, and that is these companies don't necessarily have to jack up their prices.
The amount the prices have been raised is far more than the cost of putting those products on the shelf. So go. It's just
to people asking about mods banning you, I can't talk to people in a live stream in front of like 360 people about, one person's ban. You have to take it up with the mods. For Roundel, yeah, I don't just stop the stream to bring people on to start talking about whatever Jon Stewart's talking about right now. Yeah.
Choice.
Boom.
And it's so funny that it's like prices are going up. What do we do? It's this complex problem, and no one's like, wait, have people just made the prices more?
Yes.
That's the part that always confuses me. It's like inflation is always something that just happens to companies where it's like, I don't know what's going on, versus people being in the boardroom being like, we're going to charge $3 more.
Yeah.
And by the way, only happens when you raise people's wages. When you pump the money at the high end, at the asset end of like real estate and bonuses, everybody's fine. The minute you give somebody fucking a couple of bucks extra an hour, everybody's like, milk is $1,000 a gallon. Can I tell you who I blame?
Who?
Rogan. It's got to be.
That's fair.
All right, so here's what we did. We got in on the. Are you all right, Henrik? Oh boy, Henrik is out.
I'm just making a good face for the memes that are going to be made.
I know they're coming. So somebody had a tweet storm. Is that the correct way to go? Go viral. We reached out immediately.
Oh, John,
her name is Lindsay Owens. She has a PhD. She's the executive director of the Groundwork Collaborative, was also an economic policy advisor for Senator Elizabeth Warren, Sociological Association Congressional Fellow, a teacher on domestic poverty inequality at Georgetown University, which is a fine, fine institution. Lindsay Owens, welcome to The Problem. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you.
Lindsay, your tweets were music to my ears. I've been yelling about this idea that we have no control over inflation because we can't. Companies still got to make the profit that they make. The only thing you can do is raise prices. Lindsay, what's your take on inflation? What's going on? And if that is the only solution?
Yeah, I've been yelling about this for a while too. You hear a lot about inflation falling from the sky, or Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, sort of like waving a magic wand and deciding the price. But the truth is prices are set by firms, right? Companies decide the price that they want to charge for goods. And what we have been seeing that was starting to disturb us is reporting not just of an increase in profits, right? Increase in profits, fine. Demand is up. You sell more lemonades at the lemonade stand, you're going to drive more profit. But what we're seeing is an increase in profit margins. So there's a story about how.
And I know every time this is brought up, there's all this like fervor. It's like, oh, well, the left doesn't understand economics at all. They don't even know the difference between the two things. But I was like, this is a very crucial point and one that is important and needs to be talked about more.
They had to charge you more because the lemons cost more.
That's right.
Okay, fine. Like they pass on the cost of the lemons, the additional cost of the lemons. That should not drive up profit margins. Profit margins are driven up when they pass on the cost of the lemon and then tack on like a little something extra for the effort.
So in a time of crisis, and we are in a time of crisis, is there any ability to control that? We don't really have any ability to say to a company in a time of crisis, you stop jacking us on lemons. We're just going to keep riding this lemon analogy, Lindsay, all the way through the end of the podcast. I hope you don't mind that.
Now, my response to that, if I was coming at it from like a pro-capitalist perspective, right, would be, well, the markets, the competition. If someone is going to do that, then obviously other people can step in and offer you more affordable lemons. So the market is going to correct that. So if one person is going to just be this incredibly greedy capitalist, he's going to charge an exorbitant amount for the lemons, then more people can enter the market and then offer it at a better price. That way it solves the entire problem. But that doesn't put into account the monopolization of a lot of these fields and categories, especially when you talk about things like meat production, for example, in the United States, which happens to have a very concentrated, small amount of producers that produce the vast majority of meat. Like you walk into a supermarket, and I know there's that Bastia meme where he's like, I am always marveled when I walk into the supermarket to see the wonderful splendors of capitalism, like, on display, how we can have foods from around the entire world. And like my response to that immediately was like, but you do understand that there's only about 11 corporations that produce all of it. Like the vast majority of this food is produced by a very small amount of companies that do have, I guess, what you consider complete monopolistic control over the markets of the sales of these things.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are a number of reasons why we're seeing high inflation right now. First of all, we've got some demand. People are buying some products. Some of that is because people have money in their pockets. That's a great thing. And I don't think the solution to this problem is to make a bunch of people poorer to solve our inflation problem. Some of what we're seeing is, a shift from more money being spent on services to more money being spent on goods, right? That's creating some real supply challenges, right? Like supply is not meeting demand. And there are a lot of different reasons for that we can talk about. And the pandemic, of course, is among them, but it's not the only one. But some of what we're seeing is this just sort of rank profiteering. Now, there are some tools in our toolbox for dealing with profiteering when it reaches the level of being sort of collusion or price fixing.
Or gouging.
Yeah, in 38 states, there are laws on the book against price gouging in certain situations, like emergencies, like when there's a flood or fire or an earthquake, things like that. But other tools that we have in our toolbox, frankly, when we see sort of rank profiteering like this, is like we can drive on tax, right? We can raise the corporate.
Oh, we're learning about lemons today. Lemons entered Europe near southern Italy no later than the 2nd century AD during the time of ancient Rome. However, they're not widely cultivated. They were later introduced into Persia and then into Iraq and Egypt around 700. It is a combination or a hybrid between the bitter orange, the sour orange, and the citron. Huh. We've made so many wild things. Like when you look at all the variations, I think it's a broccoli, and there's just like the infinite combinations from manipulating.
Tax rate, we could implement an excess profits tax.
You're talking,
there are a number of options.
A legislative fix. A legislative fix, I don't have any confidence in. Henrik and Kayson might, but I don't, because the government is so slow to act. They are so analog in a digital world. And I want to make clear, have you guys noticed, because I notice this when I go shopping, like these are Johnson & Johnson. This is like if you go to the drugstore, Tyson, if you go buy chicken, like these are major companies that have jacked the prices really high. And you're saying chances are it's not commensurate with the added costs of their supply chain issues. It's actually quite a bit larger than that. And would they admit to that? Like if you were to call them on that, what would they say?
Well, we don't have to call them. They've already told us. So my organization, we looked at hundreds of earnings call transcripts. So earnings calls are just the calls that CEOs and CFOs have with shareholders when they release their quarterly earnings report, as they do on a regular basis and file those with the SEC. By the way, they have to tell the truth on earnings calls by law. So this isn't just, embellishment or bragging. This is them telling us what's actually happening. And what we see time over time, I mean, we're not cherry picking this. I mean, it's a target rich environment. The CEOs are really just bragging and crowing about the pricing that they've been able to pull off.
All right, here we go. I'm gonna reenact, Lindsay. This is Kason. You're gonna be a shareholder for Johnson & Johnson. Henrik, I don't know what your role is in this.
I'll figure something out.
I'm gonna be the CEO. Hey, everybody. We are fucking killing it. There's some supply chain issues. It has caused some problems, but we've decided to jack this shit like you can't believe.
Love the look on the guest's face. He's just like, all right, I'm on board.
Honestly, I'm dipping my balls in gold as I'm on this earnings call.
You are bound by law to tell the truth, so you are literally dipping your balls in gold. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my point. Kason.
I'm very invested into this conversation because there's a dollar store in my neighborhood that has decided they're going to $1.25, and I'm furious. And
Are they going to call
gotta change
themselves?
the name.
Are they going to change the name?
No, they kept the name Dollar Store, and they're like, "Sorry." I'm like, "No, you don't get to do this for Q-tips, but it's like QUE tips. It's like you don't get to
Not
do
the
that.
brand stuff, right?
Yeah, no, we know this is bootleg.
I'm gonna be honest. There's a lot of cleaning products where I was like, it doesn't make any difference. Bleach is bleach. It doesn't matter if you're buying the very expensive bleach or the bleach. It's gonna bleach. It's gonna bleach is bleach. Q-tips aren't one of them. Q-tips, like when you buy the cheaper Q-tips, it hurts. It hurts the eardrums. Just that's the one product where I was like, I normally don't go for name brands because when it comes to like soap, I'm like soap, right? Like I don't need that fancy bougie soap made out of people from Fight Club, although it would be nice.
You don't get
It's
to
a Q-tip with a sharp end.
Right. Lindsay, I think the point we ultimately come to here is we are under the illusion that we live in a free market capitalist system.
I know. Here comes the stun lock. I get what you're saying, checkered squares. If you reach your eardrums with Q-tips, you're doing something wrong. But like, I've heard that you're supposed to wax your ears on a regular basis. But like, who has the time, really? For me to melt a little bowl of wax and learn how to put it in my ears and not have it just like slurm all over my face and cake on my face. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. And I look like a wax bukkake or something like that. And now I have to pull the whole thing out and clean it via like I've heard that. It's just, maybe I should just buy one of those systems. The ones that have the pumps where I put in like one cord and you see the ads where it shows the water circulating through your cranium as if that's like, yeah, time for a flush. You need to cleanse the system. Let's get that. Well, maybe I'll attach it to the ears as well, and then that can circulate through the entire system. Then you go. Then now the whole system works.
And we in no way live in a free market capitalist system. But the thing that's so surprising to me is your knowledge of this is not what I hear on the news.
I didn't know you have to watch yours. I don't know if that's accurate either. I've heard mixed things. I've heard, my partner's come back from seeing the family doctor and she was one of the first people to be like, well, it's actually not great for your ears to use Q-tips because you're essentially, pushing a lot of the wax back into your ears and it's not the best practice. And like, it's probably better if you get your ears waxed. And I was like, what? You see those ear waxing kits and it's just like, all you have to do is melt the wax and you get it in there and then wait for it to solidify and then you pull out all the excess wax and more wax and it's all the same thing, right? Like what? Yeah.
Not heard one person talking about
I can have them rinsed out. Well, what high-end ear doctors are you all seeing who do ear cleansing projects. This is the topic, by the way. If you're just tuning into the show, this is definitely what Jon Stewart is talking about. This is about ear hygiene and the best way to achieve it.
The excessive profit margins
feels good.
on like network news, right? They all talk about this is out of control. We don't know how to stop it. The Fed's going to jump in. Not one has said, or, one thing we could do is maybe not jack prices so high during this time.
Yeah, look, I think this is very undercovered. I'll tell you where you'll find it is you find it in business reporting. Business Insider, Forbes, Yahoo Finance, CNBC, Squawk.
Yeah, but I imagine then they're like, oh, this is a good way to do business then. Oh, I didn't even realize that. All we have to do is jack up our prices and then we make more profit. It's like, well, what if people can't afford it, sir? It's like, oh, they will. They will. We own 1/3 of the market. So, I mean, are they going to go to the other two guys? We'll tell them. I'll just get them on the phone and we'll all jack up our prices together. It'll be a beautiful thing for everybody, especially us.
Like they cover earnings calls because that's important information to cover as they track the stock market. And frankly, investors come to those sources for information on those earnings calls. But, they cover it as a kind of like,
okay, we're here. I'm getting a lot of conflicting messages in relation to this topic. Clearly, we're invested in ear cleanliness. Apparently, you can get a home rinsing kit, which I suppose I will have to try out next. People are saying they use ear candles as well. Take a shower, rinse your ears. That's usually been my preferred method. But there's a whole new world opening before me.
A little bit of a just the facts, ma'am kind of approach. And they also cover it, frankly, as an exciting development, which is inflation has been really good for business. Inflation is keeping the stock market. Yeah.
When I've tuned into those and they're talking about it, they don't ever say like, profit margins are not commensurate to the inflationary pressures of the supply chain. They always are like, look at these calls. Oh, the profit calls. Ladies and gentlemen, the bulls are running. This is amazing. Like nobody ever stops to go, oh, we're getting fucked by these folks.
And let me just say, as someone who has had my finger on the pulse of everything that Yahoo Finance is reporting.
Sure. Go ahead.
They've been gloating. They've been gloating. But it is very funny to me, Lindsay, that what you say is true in that like, and John, what you're talking about in the news reporting is that there's sort of this like panic of like a mysterious thing is going on. We have no idea what's the solve. How's that happening? Where's it coming from? And then we just have these calls where people are like, oh, it's because I raised the price 30%.
So if all of these things are public consumption, what's the disconnect between what these companies are doing with inflation and how the American public receives it? Because it sounds pretty clear to me on this call that like that's what they're doing. So what's the disconnect between these like shareholder meetings,
that's
all
great
these things
question.
that are public? Like why is that?
Yeah, so I would give a couple of answers. The first is that Americans are pretty angry about inflation right now. I mean, the polling really does bear that out. The latest kind of Moody's analysis suggests that families on average are getting hit with about $276 a month in additional costs because of inflation.
Right.
Like, that's not a media conspiracy. That's like families who see the, receipt piling up at the grocery store. And frankly, most Americans also know that this is part of the story. When we look at polling on if corporations are to blame for inflation, there's a chunk of people who are pretty aware of this, right? Across the political spectrum, Republicans, Independents, Democrats. I think, I don't think it gets covered as much by the sort of standard like political reporters, just because there's a vested interest, I think, in using inflation, weaponizing inflation to sort of like wedge Biden, right? There are also folks who, there's a sort of like honest intellectual debate about the extent to which fiscal policies in the United States contributed to this, and folks are playing that out. And there's a lot of reporting about the supply chain and what's going on there. And the supply chain story, again, is actually related to this exact story we're talking about here, which is why are these companies in a position to charge extra without fear of being undercut by competition? Well, 50 years of reshaping our economy through mergers and acquisitions, creating these giants, 4 people pack meat and get it to the grocery store. There are 3 major shipping.
That should be an alarm bell to a lot of people, by the way, if you didn't already know that. Because I know we have this disconnect. When you walk into the supermarket, it's just like, oh, what do I really want today? I guess some nuggies. Okay, let's go to the nuggie section. I get my choice of 6 different companies and 6 different brands of nuggies. That seems pretty cool. I get my choice, my variation. I could even buy local if I want to. Look, I've got the local farmers market nuggies right there. Get them, go home, cook them, eat them, process finished. You don't think about the fact that there's only 3 or 4 main suppliers of meat for the entire United States. That is a massive monopolistic power they have, and able to control, yes, and dictate the price, and that will have ripple effects in other parts of the economy as well, because if you are spending more money on, you know, buying the nuggies that you wanted for your life, you might have less money to spend in other areas, and so the process continues.
Cartels, you know, basically like one country handling all the semiconductors.
Jesus, this sounds like the mafia. This isn't free market capital. It's like, hey, it's a shame if something would happen to your chicken prices.
I feel like he's getting close. I feel like he's getting pretty damn close, you know? I feel like a lot of people are. I've seen so much pivot. I mean, this is like one of the only really, you know, inspiring parts of the past couple of years with the pandemic. There's been a lot of people on a variety of issues who were normies on certain things, and then all of a sudden it's like, but why is it like this? And then you're like, well, I mean, this could be a long story or a short one, depending on what you're looking for, but, you know. Oh, go vegan? How do you know my nuggies had meat in them at all? You know, there's non-meat nuggies as well. There's a variety of alternatives for the soy enthusiast amongst you.
Okay.
You got to watch yourself out there.
I see you, Tyson.
So the meat packers are definitely a mafia. There's 4 people who run 85% of market share.
Is that good? I'm not an econ guy. Is that good? Is that good?
No.
Thumbs up or thumbs down on that?
Thumbs down.
Okay.
2 thumbs down. One of them's Tyson. Another one is this company, a Brazilian company called JBS.
I think in Canada
they just settled,
2 or
you know,
3.
of course, no fault, a price fixing settlement 2 weeks ago. But the 2 brothers who run the company are like recently out of jail for bribery. You know, this is not like, this is a lot less
what?
like your Econ 101 textbook and a lot more like The Sopranos.
Okay, so that one just disappeared. Probably just going to be a footnote. But another one of those like, oh, wait, what? One of the largest suppliers of meat to all of the United States went to, what for bribery? Oh, interesting. Probably nothing.
It absolutely is.
Wait, the chicken people are bribing people?
Yeah.
Okay, so the name is JBS, just bribing someone. That's in the title.
All right, there it is.
Should we be saying all this stuff?
Henrik Blix is calling out Brazilian meat purveyors in a very controversial way.
I'm going to wake up with chicken feet in my bed.
By the way, I've never slept more soundly than when I wake up surrounded by. Lindsay, what?
He still got it. Okay, that's timing. You see, Jon Stewart, the live streamer or the video streamer, a lot of people couldn't make the transfer. Their comedy didn't work, you know. And I do enjoy John Oliver. I think he does a good job. But you could tell that so many people struggled when everyone had to move indoors and set up their little home studio stations, and they were trying to do the same punchlines and have their writers deliver the same stuff, and none of it was really landing without the audience or all of the animal cracker metaphors popping up on the screen. You know, it's a different skill set. It really is. It's kind of like, you know, the OG battle between the streamers versus debaters, but it was actually the TV hosts versus streamers.
Like, this should be screamed from the hilltops, because as soon as we stimulate the economy on the demand side, like we did during the pandemic, inflation runs rampant. But when you stimulate it on the supply side, inequality explodes, but inflation is fine.
And to answer the question, that one where he was like, should we be saying this? Does anyone know about this? Are you allowed to talk about this? Or are we going to get in trouble? Is the mafia, the meat mafia, going to come after us? In large part, it has to do with the fact that I believe those, and you know, whether it be corporate power or the individuals we're talking about, they don't believe that things like the Jon Stewart conversation or my transformation of this conversation into brand new content, either version of that actually affects their bottom line. Like you can have whole documentaries come out that show you oh, here's all the like inherent evils of factory farming and why this is untold levels of cruelty, and it gets watched by whatever percentage of the population that watches Netflix, and of that population a certain amount will say, well, fuck, I really need to reduce my meat consumption, or I really need to do X, or maybe I need to stop eating meat altogether, or maybe I need to become active in actually fighting against this. But ultimately, as a whole, it doesn't actually affect their bottom line. That's why it's not something where it's like, oh, are we getting away with telling secrets? Can no one else know about this?
Just those on the high end get to hoard. So
yeah,
how
Apple
do we
TV's not.
leverage
I think I'm doing more to promote Jon
syndicate
Stewart here
to not have such profit margins? Why can't the
Thank you,
government
B.
then
Thanks for
jump
keeping
in,
us
like
safe.
in the way that they invoke the War Powers Act? Why can't they jump in then and start to alleviate some of these supply chain issues and start to alleviate some of these manufacturing lags and force these companies into something? Because, and maybe this is paranoia, but it does strike me that as soon as workers start to demand higher wages, and as soon as the government stimulates on the demand side rather than the corporate side, suddenly the economy decides, we're going to go into crisis mode and hyperinflate everything. Like, it does feel very suspicious. And if I'm being paranoid, please tell me so.
No, I mean, at least, at a minimum on the political side, if not the larger economic narrative. I mean, of course, workers are going to get scapegoated for this. Like, that's absolutely the play. Workers' wages and, frankly, unions. Do you
remember when that happened at the start of the pandemic? So many major corporations and big chains were suddenly being like, okay, we'll pay $15 an hour. Oh, yeah, we're gonna up it to $16 an hour. Okay, yeah, we'll try to pay a living wage. We'll do this, and then everyone was like, well, yeah, but as soon as they do that, the prices will go sky high. I mean, like the cost of a burger at McDonald's will go from like $2 to $12. It'll happen overnight.
We're going to see.
And then people were like, well, that doesn't happen in other countries, though. You still have like McDonald's employees in Denmark and other Scandinavian countries that have much higher qualities of life, in large part, not just because they have, a combination of factors, very good public health care, stuff like that. But still, it's not as if the cost of the cheeseburger suddenly skyrockets in those areas.
And have already seen folks blaming like unionized workers at the Port of LA for the supply shortage. And, it is real to worry about what economists call a wage price spiral, right? Wages going up and then companies increasing prices to cover the cost of wages, and then prices going up and workers asking for more wages. The good news is we haven't seen that at all in this moment. Right. So we can be fairly confident we're not in a situation where there's a wage price spiral. I think we're in a profit price spiral, right?
That's right.
Where these CEOs are driving harder and harder on price and are saying that, there's more room to drive on price and will continue to drive on price.
Is the answer here not so much economic policy or monetary policy, but trust busting? Are we back in the Teddy Roosevelt days? Is this about the government stepping in to create an environment that doesn't become so monopolistic or cartelish or any of those things? And how is there a way that they can?
One of the problems with this, because like I would agree that seems to be the best way to tackle this, is a little bit of the pendulum swing, because you can have someone who may come in and implement some of those measures. Then you can have someone who comes in like Reagan, who's like, I'm going to bust every single union that exists and destroy a lot of the fabrics of what created workers' rights and all that kind of stuff. And we'll see the end result will obviously be trickle down economics to the benefit of the general public. That's how this should work.
Create more competition and less price collusion in this marketplace.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that like we run this policy play and all of our problems are solved. Like, this mess took 50 years to create, and like we're not getting out of it overnight, and like we may not even get out of it before the next mess hits. I think the first, absolutely right. I mean, as aggressive as possible on antitrust. I want to see like the Department of Justice going after collusion, going after price fixing, taking this on criminally, which it is. It's criminal. President Biden has asked the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice, and senators, such as Senator Elizabeth Warren, have asked the Department of Justice to look into this. And I think that they take those requests seriously. And so hopefully we'll see some action on that front. But there's definitely work that the Federal Trade Commission can take on as well here, not criminal ones, but other fines and abilities to take on this issue.
How much of an issue do they think it is? And do you know if that's made a dent in their priorities?
Yeah, I mean, Lena Khan, who chairs the Federal Trade Commission, has spoken out on this pretty forcefully about both the profiteering that she's seeing right now and also, frankly, the kind of long arc story that we talked about around the supply chain and how, waves of mergers and acquisitions over the last few decades got us to a place where these giants were really able to capitalize.
Oh yeah, Duvarian. Have you not seen the meme? That's a meme that's put on Twitter a lot when people you'll see fast food accounts always think they're all edgy and funny on Twitter, and then someone will be like blah blah blah, then someone will respond with, by the way, why do you only pay workers in the US $7.25 an hour when you pay workers in Denmark $20 an hour? And then usually it's crickets right afterwards.
Is on a crisis. So I think she takes this quite seriously.
Is there a reason why inflation and competition aren't talked about together? Because it just seems like inflation seems to be a consumer's problem. And now that Frontier and Spirit are together, where am I going to get my $68 flights from? And I don't care who makes my bread. I don't care who makes my eggs. I don't care about none of that.
Well, none of us
So
do.
why isn't competition more of a priority here versus letting
Because we
these
don't
companies...
live in a free market capitalist system, even though we pretend we do.
I was just trying to alley-oop that for John. Thank you for coming.
He slammed it into the mic.
Lindsay, is there anything that's giving you hope that this part of the story will A, be told more forcefully, and B, that there will be some policy prescriptions that can help deal with it before this thing spreads out of control and we end up with just giant rate hikes and all kinds of other things that don't really address that core part of the problem?
Yeah, definitely rate hikes are not going to fix our supply chain issues or
Next
our
time,
competition
Tofu.
issues or these sort of more structural issues in the marketplace. I mean, I can answer, the question about why economists aren't interested in this and why competition doesn't get, brought up in this space. And I think the short version is they don't really have a theory of power. Market power, and power matters for how markets are shaped. And I think folks like historians who study power, political economists, heterodox economists, sociologists who do, and folks who are in the antitrust space do think power matters and how economies work.
Bochenek says this is just more free market than most markets market. Well, I mean, ultimately, I don't think that Jon Stewart is anti-capitalist. Although I am loving the direction of a lot of these videos, because this is the third one I've seen him do where he's talking to guests who are kind of like, oh, I just want to point this out to you. And he's like, I did not know that's how this worked, right? But yeah, the idea being that I am, for capitalism. I understand. And I think that there's just a couple of bad actors and that there's crony capitalism and there's the good kind of capitalism. And we've just found ourselves entrenched in this unfortunate situation that is mostly now dictated by crony capitalism. And so that's why we have the problems we have in society. And then it would take a much longer than a 22-minute interview to explain to someone, right, that the manifestations, the way these things seem to kind of permeate. If you have corporate capitalism, and then you also you mix in industrial capitalism, and you have this infinite growth with finite resource kind of idea, then of course the direct competition is eventually going to become with other. And then what is the only healthy thing to do in this is there's going to be the cannibalization of other corporations, right? Bigger companies are going to inhale smaller companies, buy out their resources, either gut them or try to absorb them, and that's done in every single field that we have. It doesn't matter if it's food or beer or aviation or tech companies, right? It seems like every single time there happens to be a company that grows to a certain size, it's going to start to try and eliminate its competition because, of course, it's got CEOs and boards, and part of their responsibility is to have a fiduciary, increase in profits for their shareholders, better quarterlies. So these kind of systems find themselves to be inevitable under our current framework, and they continue to permeate. And even slight corrections along the way are good. I'm not opposed to them. I would like to see there be better antitrust laws in the United States. I would like to see the prevention of major acquisitions. I would like to see Disney stop inhaling every single property that exists on the planet Earth until it's the only source of entertainment that we ever have. And should the House of Mouse ever decide, well, by the way, I've decided today that dicks and boobas are immoral, so we're going to remove them from all our characters. They're just going to completely not have any kind of appendages whatsoever, that's a problem. I would like to prevent that, you know, or Amazon eventually owning real estate and property, and we have to live in little Amazon centers and eat Amazon food and get our Amazon goo out of these little tube machines that we pull on levers to get. Like, I would rather not us march towards that as it seems like we are.
And I think, you know, macroeconomists are going to have to take power into account going forward if they want to actually be a predictive science and be helpful in a moment like this, which frankly, they aren't really right now.
Do you think they got caught off guard that...
No, Disney is becoming a real estate developer? Is that what all the hype's about? I've heard about like these new Disney, not like lands, but Disneyland, like lands belonging to Disney where you live in these Disney like communities. And it just seems like something that really appeals to like Disneyites. I don't know if there's a word for them yet, but like I've said before, there's something really creepy about people who are like, they buy like all year round Disney tickets, like super passes, or I don't even know what they're called. Like, I'm totally like, hey, I'm not going to tell you don't take your kids to Disneyland at one point in your life. We've all had our memories. It's fun as a kid, you know. Rides are fun. I love roller coasters. Okay, I like really scary, strange ones in like countries where you're not allowed to legally have those in Canada or whatever. But anyways, I'm not saying that don't ever take your kids to Disneyland, but I'm saying that there's this weird cult that surrounds Disneyland where people are like, I have to go there all the time because that's where life is happy and everything is perfect and there is no evil, so I'm going to keep going there. And then there's people who move into like those little like Disney centers near Disneyland, and then they start going to Disneyland on such a regular basis, and as you walk down like the hallways, it's always playing It's a Small World After All, and there's this weird indoctrination that comes with it where they're like, yes, I'm a princess or a prince, I have to find mine, all that weird shit. Disney's new venture. Story Living by Disney is Disney's new venture into planned residential it is Story Living. That's what it was. Yeah, they're developing residential communities. Oh, yeah, that's creepy. It's creepy because there's already this like cult-like adoration of just Disney as a brand, right? Because like, what does Disney sell? What is the Disney brand? It's ultimately family magic. That's it, right? The idea that like if you are watching a Disney movie or you're going to a Disney playground or you're enjoying Disney in any way, shape, or form, that it's going to have family magic, a magical experience, and it's not going to be R-rated, and it's going to be you know, safe and polished and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if we should extend that to all of existence. Like, first it's going to be like Disney community centers, and then Disney governance. Do they have a Disney mayor? Is there like a little sheriff in town? Do they have Disney police? Is it a whole bunch of like goofies and and like, how does that work out? Is there a Disney judge? Is there a separate set of laws? Does racism exist? I'd like to know. Or has Disney gotten rid of that as well?
That corporations that have like, you know, almost monopolistic control over pricing decided to not necessarily gouge, but jack it more than is necessary.
Yeah, I don't think that they like to think about this. And I think the earnings call data, which keeps trickling out, is really helpful in sort of forcing this issue to the floor.
Credit to Bunsen Honeydew on that drop. The Goof Stoppo. Amazing.
And there are
Disney
a lot
police.
more
No way.
where this came from, and there's a lot more to put out.
Lindsay Owens from the executive director of the Groundwork Collaborative. Thank you so much.
So, great interview, good discussion. I'm very, very happy they had it. Sorry if we got distracted by discussions of ear waxing and wax bukkake and Disneyland and the Goof Stoppo and all that other stuff. But it is refreshing that Jon Stewart is bringing on guests to talk about these kind of things, because I do not see this typically spoken about in mainstream media. You usually get just this narrative that like, well, the cost of living is going up, and then that's always what you've been bought into, right? In Canada, we have something called the Bank of Canada that sets, you know, what the increase in the rate of inflation is going to be, and so all of a sudden it's like, well, based on that, everything else extrapolates from there. I mean, it has nothing to do with just individual corporate greed or the fact that there are monopolistic control over a handful of fields, and they get to dictate the pricing. And should they just want, you know, price go up, profit go up, they can do that, and that's kind of a problem, you know. Is that the Serfs without lands getting landslocked? Yeah, I know. I gotta do it. I assume there's a Mickey Mouse court as well. Well, would that count? Could you walk into a Mickey Mouse court and be like, oh, this is a Mickey Mouse court? I throw it out. Like, it's not a kangaroo court, sir. This is a Mickey Mouse court, which means that it is a real courtroom. You don't have to sit down, put your fucking hand on what would even be the Disney Bible at this point. I don't know, George Lucas's original script for Star Wars or something, and then repeat after me. Be some wild stuff.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form. Available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we beseech thee to smite down our enemies. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your humble court jesters, here to amuse you. To our lords, Trevor R., we give thanks for this spit of land for us to eke out this meager existence. To our knights, Merid, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Ellie Leslie, Alex P., Brandon, Words Greenwood, Nate, that one guy, Hagbird Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, Val 9000, Jenna Tall, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multi Mondi, Trevor Yanis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojack, Cern 42, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Nkosin, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our flag in a veil, and we salute you, our friends.